Welcome to the Crystal Cocoon. This is Jessie. We have Hannah, Neil, and Brandon. We're here to talk today about healing, a little bit more about nature of reality, a bit about how we work. Just try to open a conversation with some of the questions I've been receiving. Do you guys want to talk about that?
Well, I'm not familiar with the questions you've been receiving.
Right.
But,
Wait, you're not that good of a psychic?
Come
on.
Get in my brain.
Well,
I can do that.
No, wait, don't.
That's what I thought.
I was kidding. I was just kidding.
That happens a lot, that overlap.
Oh, God.
I think, when we talk about healing and healers, what does that really mean? What defines a healer? I know early on in my journey, healer was one of the first words I ever heard, along with follow your heart. But I had a lot of, how shall I say, teachers, mentors, other people in my life go, healer? Why would you want to be a healer? And kind of have a sort of derogatory connotation associated with it. Like everyone thinks they're a healer.
So who do you think you are to heal somebody?
Right.
That's what I've heard a lot.
Totally. So I'm curious if you guys have had to differentiate through some titles or have an expanded, I guess, maybe glossary. What does healer mean to you?
Yeah.
I haven't so much experienced that as much as like if I say a healer, like I do healing work. Oh, so you're a doctor? I'm like, no, not a doctor. I put my hands on people.
You're
happens.
a masseuse. Reiki,
Stuff happens.
Reiki
Sometimes I don't put my hands on people, but I think about it. Stuff happens.
Sometimes I put my hands in people.
We don't talk about that on the radio.
That stuff happens.
Maybe we should talk about it.
Well, no, I mean, really, there's times when Brandon has done work on me, like planting a seed in my third eye. Feeling his fingers in my brain was a very unexplainable, undescribable sensation, but they were there.
Yes, sometimes when I work, what I'll do is see the hologram of a person. Because obviously I'm not going to literally put my fingers inside the brain. But so what I'll do is I'll see the hologram in front of me, and then I'll see right where I need to go. And it's just easiest to move my fingers inside the hologram. And people will report literally feeling my fingers inside their head, moving things around.
Yeah. Or wherever he's focusing that
Or wherever
that work. There have been others.
It could be the spine or whatever. But,
Right.
Yeah.
In the gut.
The first times Brandon and I were actually doing, we were doing group work, but Brandon was I think you were sitting next to me in that session, and when we tuned into each other's energy, all we did was laugh.
Oh, yeah.
We just busted out, just uncontrollable fits of laughter. So, we're not really doing anything. Everyone else is quiet. I'm in the corner trying to stifle my laughter. But sometimes that happens to me when I do energy work. You feel a lot of different sensations.
It's true.
Particularly if you're sensitive, if you're an empath at any kind of level, you're going to feel something.
I remember the first time I had that experience with that uncontrollable laughter. It was it was just kind of crazy, but I just kind of went with it, and I was getting the reconnection done, so it was like an attunement type thing. So I was laying down on the table, and sometimes when I get massive amounts of energy flowing through me, my body will start to twitch. And
it does more than that.
Yeah, well, my body was literally flopping up and down.
Yeah.
Like a fish out of water. But
convulse, I would say, rather than twitch.
Yeah, okay. That's more appropriate. I thought it was strange, I was like, oh, okay, this is weird. I'm going to try and stop it. And so every time I tried to stop the energy, then this uncontrollable burst of laughter would come over me, and I couldn't stop laughing. Every time I tried to stop this energy, I was like, okay, I get it. I'm just going to go with it. I'm just let it happen. And then when I let it happen, that's when my body started flopping up and down again, and these intense emotions came through me. I started crying, and it was joyful but crying.
Anybody want some ice cream?
Well, it is a very hot and sunny day here in Portland, so a little ice cream.
We do have Eric here. He could go run for it.
We all scream for ice cream.
Scream.
Oh, that's That's funny.
As we're talking about laughing.
Right.
That's perfect.
Comic timing.
Oh,
The entertainer
synchronicity.
starts playing.
Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, that was the first time I ever channeled too. I mean, I don't we didn't full channel, but like one sentence kept playing over and over, and so I think there's a lot behind that laughter that we're not really like aware of. There's a lot of energy that moves behind those
For
different
sure.
energies that we're not necessarily totally aware of at the time with our human mind, but when we allow them, profound shifts can happen.
Totally.
Yeah.
I used to experience that a lot with a friend of mine who was also a shaman. And there were definitely times where he could direct a certain amount of energy at me and I would just start uncontrollably laughing. Uncontrollably laughing. And I would eventually have to like beg, please stop. I can't breathe. I'm going to have an accident. This is not going to be pretty. Please stop.
Yeah.
But it definitely does move a lot of energy, and it's not something you can necessarily control. But
Well, and I think that's part of, I think, why with your lesson with the laughter, right? It's the lesson is stop trying to control it.
Right.
is,
Exactly.
Is to allow the flow to
Yeah.
go through. I know the first time that Brandon and I got together also, when we sat down and did work together, I think the first time we got together we just talked, because it was crazy how many different parallels in our lives there were. And then the next time we did work, we decided... Did we do work?
We did play a little bit.
We did play a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. But we
Yeah.
just started laughing the first time our energies connected with each other.
Right.
It was that uncontrollable laughter, and it kind of became my new measure. Like if I don't feel that with somebody that I'm connecting with energetically, I really don't want to work with you. I'm sorry. I need to laugh with you before I can start crying with you or bearing my soul with you, which is so much a part of the relationship between a healer and the person that they're working with, or whoever their client may be, is can you be that vulnerable? Can you bear that part of your soul?
Right.
Well, I think for a lot of healers, at least the ones that I've experienced and what people have told me is that, like I've said before on previous podcasts, people have always told me their secrets. Whether I wanted it or not, they've been willing to divulge some of their most horrible and traumatic secrets. So some of us just carry an energy of trust and of safety because of the lessons we've learned. So I find that a lot of times when people feel really drawn to me, because there is work we have to do together. As a healer, I never am like, well, I am this big guru on the mountain. I am so great, and I have my life totally figured out. I've got all the secrets in the universe, and I know all of them, and it's great, and my life's wonderful. Yeah, there are moments like that where I feel that kind of bliss, but you know what? Every day I'm working at something.
Right.
Something, life happens. Like this morning I had a friend who passed away. And so just dealing with that and processing it and working with the collective energy that I feel from his family and his friends and the grief that they're dealing with. So that's a part of, like, I'm not actively healing those people, but I'm holding space.
Right.
Definitely holding space for them. And that's just part of how some of us show up on this planet, who we are, and just what feels very, I guess, natural for us. Like this has always been something that now I feel like I have the tools to do these kinds of things, but something I've always wanted to do and did in my own way.
I think part of the thing about being a healer, at least a good one, is that it's more than just something you do. It's a way of life.
Right.
Totally.
It's something that you're constantly doing with yourself as well as other people. And you can do that with other people because you're constantly doing that with yourself. You're constantly doing your introspective work and saying, what is it that I need to shift to make my life better? What is it that I need to do in order to get where I need to be? What kind of energies are going on with me that feel discord? So you're constantly assessing yourself and your position and your situation. And then for me, like I know at least once a day I'm doing some sort of energy work or meditation or something to try and get me more in alignment and more in tune. When before I work on other people, I do the same thing. I'm like, okay, where am I in alignment? What do I need to do here? Okay, to help get myself as much in the flow as possible so I can show up for that person. And so I think that's the part of, about being a healer that most people don't really recognize, that what the other person's doing is that it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, and especially in this world, to keep yourself in alignment and in tune with all your other friends who don't really understand. Who are going to want to call you out to do these other things, and maybe that's not really the best thing for you as a healer, to be constantly going out and to the bar with your friends. You can, maybe, but it might not be the best thing if you're trying to stay in alignment and in the flow. Once in a while is okay, but there's a certain life that I don't really do anymore like I used to. I'm kind of glad I did it, actually. I kind of got it out of the way.
I think to a certain degree we all have. I think we've had those conversations amongst ourselves about how previous incarnations of who we thought we were included a whole lot of partying.
Right.
And
well, I was a Marine, so that was just part of life.
Well, and I think that's also part of being an empath.
Right.
I mean, when you're young and you can't understand or explain why you're feeling so much when you walk into a room full of people, when you can't get people to shift their behavior around you, that they don't respect that you're sensitive, and that, no, you can't actually yell at me, that really impacts me greatly. So you don't have the same, you have to create different boundaries with people. And when you're a child, you don't know how to do that. So we develop these checking out behaviors, these ways of soothing ourselves. I'm going to go play video games. I'm going to go
get really drunk
with my friends. I mean, how many of us started doing that at too young of an age?
Right.
My son, he's 11, almost 12, and the conversation is about drugs and drinking, and behaviors are starting to come up, and he's wanting to understand them and asking me questions. Yesterday we had a conversation that was horrible, it was wonderful, but, when did you start smoking cigarettes, Mom? I didn't know you smoked cigarettes. And I started at 11. Oh my God. I started at your age.
Wow.
Right.
So why, so we develop these behaviors and we carry them into adulthood, and then it takes creating a life that forces you to break the behaviors. It's up to you how stubborn you are in order to let them break. I'm pretty stubborn. I see,
I think we all go through different shifts on, how well we treat our bodies.
Right.
And it's really all about self-love and self-worth. And so, I'm going through a shifting point right now where I'm like, okay, I have to really get back into supporting my body nutritionally, taking supplements that help my body, cope with stress. And, I have the laundry list of mental illnesses that I could be like, I've been diagnosed with that. And, and those are reasons to check out every day. But
I'm just thinking what our diagnosing list would look like.
I like how proud you sounded of that too. Look at this.
Yeah, did you see all these? Those are mine.
What a game to play.
Yeah, well, that's just it. We could all play that game to some degree or another that would allow me an ability to check out of life. Panic disorder and panic
dissociative disorder.
Right. Exactly. Those are all ways that we energetically learned how to cope with a level of stress.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to process a lot of stress, and so it turned into anxiety. Yeah. So I had a lot of triggers that it didn't matter what it was. If it was intense, there's my anxiety. If it was stress, there's my anxiety. So now I'm in a place where I don't have to take those pills. I don't want to take those pills. I don't live with anxiety every day. It does still show up, absolutely. And I'm just working through a period now where I've had to really okay, the way we were living life isn't working anymore. It worked for us for the last 2 years, and that was great because it got us here. But now we have to shift one more time. So better nutrition, better body care, exercising, meditation, all of those tools that we all know, but maybe don't always incorporate in our lives.
Not enough.
I think that's just the thing. If you're walking the healing path,
Right.
is that you'll find that no matter how far you go, there's always further to go.
Yeah, there's always room for more.
Even when you perfect your body health, whether you perfect your belief system, and you're really not perfecting your belief system because everything's based on
I'm kind of curious what that would look like.
But when you reach a state of enlightenment,
right.
like an enlightened person will never say, I'm enlightened.
Right.
Because once they make that declaration, it's kind of like saying, I've come to the end.
Right.
Other people might call them enlightened because, they are awakened.
Right.
But even in that state, there's further to go. There's further awarenesses to go. And I think that's one thing I really liked about one thing Greer was saying in his book about the levels of consciousness that you have is like the cosmic awareness, then there's cosmic consciousness, and then the celestial awareness and celestial consciousness. I liked how he differentiated the difference between the awareness and the consciousness itself, because there's a difference between embodying something and then knowing about it.
Right.
Totally.
And I think that essentially all people on the healing path, like that's really the goal, whether they realize it or not.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I think that comes down to, I mean, how many times have you known something but not believed it?
Oh God. Too many.
Right? You know, like, oh, I totally knew that. I just now realized I've never believed it.
Yeah. Or how many times have you known something and allowed someone else's truth to shift what you know?
Right. Supersede
To
what you know.
deny what you know. Yeah, exactly. I mean, we are taught, and that's something that gets ingrained in childhood. I remember becoming really conscious of it when my son would come to me with, presenting his view of a conversation, and right now we're really in that. His view of perception is not at all in line with mine and my husband's view of perception, and really what it is he has this filter in place where everything he has to be the victim of. And what does that look like? That looks like, no, I haven't scheduled my test yet that I'm supposed to schedule because mom hasn't talked to the person to do it yet. She's so busy. She never comes in. Truth, I've been in his gym for the last 3 times. I've dropped him off and picked him up and talked to the instructor. I had no idea I was the one that was supposed to schedule that, and I don't think I am. But he's the victim, right? So you didn't do it, and now I can't. So I shouldn't really be in trouble. And he and I had a big conversation this morning about, your perception of this needs to shift. He said he lost his TV privileges for the day, and he was like, well, Papa just got mad at me for no good reason. Really? So what did Papa say he was mad at you about? Well, he was mad because, I haven't scheduled my test yet, but he didn't really want to hear why. And I said, really? Now, I'd already had the conversation with the husband, so I know why. And he says, yeah, he wouldn't even really listen. And I hope that, you'll just let me watch TV. It's like, well, so what did he say was his problem with you? And he said, well, I haven't scheduled my test and you need to come in and talk to Russell to do that. And I said, okay, so he's upset with you because you blamed me. And when he tried to talk to you about that, you turned it into a rigid stance of, no, this is the truth. This is why, and you can't shift my reality here at all. So, yeah, he dug his heels in too. So it's all about how we perceive things. It's really about what belief systems we adopt and how strongly are we holding on to them. Are we willing to break that belief system in order to hear that inner knowledge, that guidance? Because you can't, if you're trying to convince yourself that your truth is true, you can't hear anything else. Your voice is always going to be louder in your head.
Well, I think that also bodes to sometimes when we talk about in the woo war, it's like, no, you're in your ego. Oh, yeah. This isn't my ego. Because I think sometimes we do get bullied a little.
Yeah.
There are some people out there who do have ego and do call themselves healer. I know that I've had to work really hard in this last year to really uncover a lot of truths that other healers have told me.
Right. Truths about you.
Right, truths about me, and about how I perceive, I hear a lot of voices, and that's okay. I now know who those voices are. I know why they're there. I know a lot about them. But at one point, somebody told me, you're only supposed to hear one voice, just one voice. And I was like, oh, God, well, I hear like hundreds of voices sometimes. Am I crazy? Like, oh man, I am totally out there. I'm not normal. No, I hear voices because that's what I hear.
Certified fruitcake.
But I am USDA organic. So.
There is an infinite amount of beings out there. But I have to say that you're only supposed to listen to one at a time.
Right.
There's actually an organization that I want to say it's called Voices in the Head. It was created by a woman who was going to school studying to get her, I want to say her PhD in psychology. I heard this story many years back, and she became certifiably insane and was checked into a mental hospital while she was in her, I want to say senior year of that program, working on her thesis statement. And she had voices in her head, and she was diagnosed as schizophrenic, and it was really the beginning of a very long journey for her. And she ended up creating an organization where they found that if they just acknowledged that, yeah, I just hear voices in my head, then they didn't fight with the voices so much. And then it wasn't a conflict between those voices in the head. It was, then the voices became, yes, you're going to the church now. Whatever, supporting what they were doing, supporting the thought process.
Pudding.
Right. And it's a measure of like how checked out are you to your own guidance, to your own, whether that's your higher self or your spirit guides or your angelic guardians. I mean, once I was like, okay, I'm cool hearing voices in my head. I got a lot in my head.
Right.
There's a lot of things that I hear now.
I remember when I first started my awakening, I was in Iraq. And I thought I was going crazy, but so I started looking online for people that can understand what I'm going through, and I found a lot, and I found a lot of varying degrees of people.
Supportive information.
Yeah. One of the people I came across, she had mentioned that she had 6 different personalities in her head. Mm-hmm. They were actually like other spirits inside her body. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, you can get rid of that. She's like, why would I want to?
Right.
She's like, I'm perfectly happy. Why would you get rid of your friends? These are my friends. And she's like, I'm perfectly happy with the way things are. They don't bother me. They don't take over my life. They're just like talking to somebody all the time. I'm never lonely.
Right.
I thought that was an interesting perspective of that person who was fully conscious of these other voices, fully conscious of what they were and who they were,
right,
and was okay with it.
With no judgment.
With no judgment, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, that was kind of like an interesting thing for me because I've never seen that before.
Mm-hmm. Usually when you hear about people who have voices in their head, it's a combative issue.
Right.
They're constantly in competition about who has control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that.
Right.
Well, and that was why the woman started the organization, was because she found for herself, her own personal treatment that she developed was to just let them be there. And to talk back to them sometimes. And when they were getting crazy, just like she would talk to a friend that was getting crazy, and she was,
yourself down.
Hey, have you breathed? Let's take some breaths. Okay, let's get some tea. Okay, yeah, that's right. There was a reason I didn't want to go through that fence. Okay, let's talk about the reason. Why didn't I want to go through the fence? Okay, there's a flash of a memory. We are always trying to heal ourselves. Our body, our mind, our soul is always trying to reconnect with us, heal us, help us. And if you're ignoring it, it's going to create that conversation around you instead, what you can't ignore, by throwing people in your face that are going crazy. If you're one of those people that's like, oh my God, everybody needs something from me, and my life is crazy and there's all this stuff going on. My first question is, when was the last time you sat down quietly and checked in with you? Because you're creating chaos to avoid something, to avoid looking at yourself, to avoid listening to yourself. You are in control. You make the choice when you say, okay, I'm going to schedule this at this time, and then I've got 20 minutes to then schedule this at that time, and then I've got 5 minutes. Okay, then I'll go to this. You're creating a chaotic environment, and you have to stop and go, why? Why am I doing this? And then once you get to the point where you realize, this external, this mirroring concept of what's going on around me is external because I'm not being internally focused, then you really start to get to the meat of your healing work. And what a good healer does for you, I believe, is gets you there. Mm-hmm. Brings those things into focus. Says, hey, you know what? This is what I'm seeing. And I recognize that you're not seeing it because you're stuck in that storm right now. So to me, I think also one of the biggest red flags, one of you guys mentioned this earlier, is healers who don't work on themselves. The minute you hear a healer say, I've already dealt with that. I've already dealt with my emotions. I'm all good there. This is really your problem. Well, that's a warning.
That's definitely a red flag.
Right. I've already healed that.
Right.
Oh, really?
You just don't know.
You've already healed that completely. Wow, because I still have memories that come up that I know I've healed. Mm-hmm. I've already been there. I worked on that. Oh, And here's something else I didn't see the last time I looked that I have to see now because it's affecting my life. Okay, let's heal this one more time, one more aspect of the same thing. So anytime, we talk about healers who say that they're 100%. It's funny, I was watching The Dark Crystal last night, and there's...
I love that movie.
I know, I love that movie too. And I was just kind of skipping around, but I got to the part where the two gelflings meet, and they're there, and they're looking at the prophecy, and they call those rabbit, like wind rider things.
I love those things.
That are so cool. And I just had it on in the background. It was so funny because I was having this whole conversation in my head, and just at the right moment, Jen says to Kira, "This wasn't in the prophecy," and she laughs a little and goes, "Prophets don't know everything." And I was like, boom, totally.
Yeah.
They don't know everything. As good as a healer and psychic, I'm not 100%. There's stuff that both of you pick up that I didn't even see. Perfect. That's why we complement each other so well.
Right. Well, yeah, and there's so much talk about the oneness, right? That we're all one being, that we all are one, and that we're all connected. And when I heal myself, I heal everyone. But there's not a lot of talk about the fact that there's a reason that we're all expressing as individuals. We're all bringing our own approach. We're all bringing our own understanding. When you send sensors out to explore something, you don't want something that's only sensing one thing. You want to be able to detect different levels of energy, different levels of radiation, different material contents. You want all these different sensors. You want the array.
Right. You want a broadband receiver
Exactly.
to go the gamut of all the things that you're trying to pick up.
Exactly.
You want like a century in every frequency, basically.
Exactly. Right. And that's why I think that's for me with this group that we're building together and doing energy work together. That's the most amazing part of it because, it's like if you go and you clean, you go to one of those houses that's just disgusting and you start cleaning and first you pick all the crap up, and that's kind of like, okay, we're going to cleanse out your chakra system.
Right, all the clutter.
We're going to pick up all of the dirty bottles and the dirty dishes and just pick up the debris that's around.
Or in my house,
Okay.
cat hair.
Well, then you get to see what's under that. Oh, you've got there's some real residual stuff in the corners here, and you start really sweeping up, and you can really clear that out more, and then you're like, oh, God, there's some dust on the walls. Okay, yeah, let's get all of that, and look at these spots on the floor. I got to mop these spots. Oh, nope, I'm going to have to replace this flooring. You go in, and that's what you're doing when you work on yourself. So for somebody to say, I'm all done, well, are you not traveling through the world? Because it's a dirty world.
There's some issues I had in my own life when I started the journey that I was working on, and I remember working on the same different experience and different aspects of the same experience for it seemed like a year.
Right.
And then way later, there's another aspect that was kind of related to it that came up, and it wasn't the direct experience. I've already healed that, but there was like a parallel experience that kind of correlated to that trauma.
Right.
And that popped up, and I found out that, I still need to heal this part, this aspect I haven't healed yet. And so I think that's one of the pieces that people who say that miss.
Right.
They miss the correlating experiences that's going on. But also the fact that if someone is telling you that they have to declare that they're all done, they most likely aren't.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been in business situations where we were sitting down in a business meeting, and this man who was going to do some business consulting for us for our company was beginning to tell me that I could trust him because he's a Christian, and how trustworthy he was. Well, this is the very man that, against my better advisement to the rest of the company, said, "Don't work with this man." He later screwed us over. And he was like, well, it's just business. Like, okay, you're the very person that tried to convince us through your declaration that we could trust you. So the thing is, people who have worked through it, people who have gotten to that place, you're going to know it. You're not going to have to hear it from them in order to feel it.
Right.
You're going to know it.
You'll feel that they understand.
Yeah, they have an understanding. They don't have to declare that I've done all that.
Right.
The done part is the part you need to be worried about if you hear someone saying, I'm done with that.
Well, and the declarations really are the warning. like
Yeah.
any declaration.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, I have a really good friend who I love dearly, but they're an alcoholic, and they struggle with that. And I know something's wrong when he's saying, "Trust me,
Right.
trust me, trust me. I'm good. I'm good. Trust me. I'm all good. I would never lie to you. If you would never lie to me, you don't even need to tell me that.
Right.
Right.
We're good. I'm going to assume that you would never lie to me. But if you're telling me that, I'm wondering, what are you lying about?
Exactly.
What are you withholding?
Right. I
Why are
mean, so
you
clearly
holding back?
something is right. We communicate in so many ways that we're unaware of, but that hard declaration that if I need to tell you what my intention is, then I'm trying to cover what my underlying emotion is.
Right.
And whether they're aware of that or not, well, that's up to the individual. That's
When you pay attention, there are so many things like between the lines of what people say. It,
Totally.
it's in the words they choose, the sentence structure that they have,
the subjects.
the subjects that they bring up.
Right.
It's
the,
like
the intonation of their words, how they speak, how they present. You know,
the stories that they tell that correlate to another time,
Absolutely.
like more recently. They're like, oh, well, you do what? So if you read between the lines of pretty much all the things these people say, you can really see like the truth behind their statements. And sometimes, of course, with empaths too, you can feel the energy of what they're saying. Like, oh, that
Right.
feels off. That feels way off.
Or with psychics, you get the flash of the true image of what actually happened.
Right.
That, for me, was one of the biggest struggles. I'd have somebody telling me something, and I'd have them describing it to me, and then in my head, I'm like seeing what they're describing, but it's not matching up. And I remember as a kid, like, it used to upset me. It really would upset me. And I would always feel like I'd have to, make sure I told exactly the way it happened. Because if somebody else is seeing that, they might know that I'm lying. Like, that was really in my head as a kid growing up. But as I got older and I stopped socializing with so many psychics and healers, or those kinds of people, those enlightened people through my mother, I found that nobody was really paying attention to me, what I was saying, and so I was able to be more free and look at them, and you could see how people lie to themselves, where they deceive themselves, what kind of lies they're telling, what are the things that they're covering, and how are they covering it, and what is the true suffering behind that. And for me as a healer, finding out and learning the tools and beginning to put language and framework around what do I do with this knowledge about people? How do I use this to help them? Because people would always come to us with their stories, their struggle and their pain.
Exactly. How do you get them to see past their own story?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's so if you're working with a healer, that's what they should be doing. Is helping you find your way to seeing your own truth, finding your way into your own connection with Source, figuring out how do I clean the debris out of my soul. It's the ones that come to you and say, I can fix this. Now, that's different than when you come to a person who has some unique special skills. Like we do a lot of work that, we do because of our training. We do because of our genetic makeup, because of our vessel's abilities, because of our soul's learning and evolution. We do understand energy in a different way. We are different, but we're not going to fix you. We're just going to provide and open a platform and bring the energies in, but you have to grab them. You have to incorporate them. And you have to allow those shifts to then go out into your world and shift what your exposure and your experience is. Because we can change your vibration from suffering to something else. We could bring in all these different energies, and you can feel great when you walk away from us, and then you go home and you're surrounded by the same suffering. You're surrounded by all the things that created that energy in you in the first place. It's just going to come back. It's already preset there. It's a preset radio station for you. So
when I do that work, sometimes we will preface it with, this is how, usually, the person's guides, their, divine support team, whatever. This is, I'll explain. This energetic shift that we're doing is so you can feel the difference between before and now. It's not going to last forever. But giving people the tools to create, that you can create this. This is a plausible reality for you. You can feel like this pretty much all the time if you work on what your story is. Like, you can heal your own energy by, negating the story that you tell yourself that says, I'm not worthy. I don't deserve love. I don't belong here. Whatever those things. I'm crazy.
And you remove the people who reinforce the story.
The toxicity.
You remove the ingredients in your life that bake that cake.
But I like cake.
I know.
I like the point you bring up that it's not permanent. And I by all means think it can be, because some people
Absolutely.
I've worked on, it was an instant shift,
Yep.
and it stuck. And of course, if you like Joseph Farrell, who
Right.
does the very physical healing aspect
Yeah.
of things, not just the consciousness, but the very physical, where he's focusing on a person's face, and you can see it change under his hands. He's
Unreal.
yeah, amazing. And so that's a very lasting transformation, obviously. But then there is the other cases, and I think that you're right. It's a good baseline for them to remember and get back to. For
Right.
some people, it's always about the journey. It's always about the journey that's most important, and the lessons and the wisdom you gain from the journey itself. Sometimes that's not necessarily needed, but I remember in my own experience, like these bursts of consciousness, these moments where I stepped completely into God consciousness,
Totally.
and I was there, and I was like so ecstatic and blissful, and amazed about how different my perspective was,
Right.
how tapped into an infinite stream of knowledge I was able to figure out and look at anything I choose to. And then, when it's done, it kind of like fades away. You're like, oh, coming back to reality.
Right.
Oh, reality, quote unquote. And then, but the thing that lasts is that I can get there.
Right.
I can get there. I slowly have to work back to that and figure out what are the things keeping me from being there more in a constant state. But when you're working with somebody who's doing their own healing work, it's often the same thing. So like my mom, who had a drastic, radical transformation and shift from being able to barely get out of bed because of her multiple sclerosis, fibromyalgia. Still don't know which one it actually is, and now I think it's multiple sclerosis. But
And that would make sense.
yeah, and then so her being imbalanced, her memories was going away at the time. Now it's actually good, but it was going away at the time, and barely getting out of bed, constant pain, like these concoction of medicines, degenerative disc syndrome, or degenerative disc Raynaud syndrome, and tumor in the middle of her brain, and so just this virtual like train wreck of symptoms. And the healing work I did afterwards, she was profoundly different. And like later on her ass for 2 days, but afterwards she was profoundly different. She got up, no pain, off her medicine, her depression, her suicidal depression, completely gone. And then being able to go out in the garden, which she hasn't done for months, and then be able to tend to her garden. And she was just the most joy she's been in 15 years. And she couldn't even tell she was sick at that point. But slowly over time, some of the conditions started coming back, because underneath all that, her beliefs were still there.
Right.
Some of the things that got her to that point in the first place was still there.
The framework still existed.
Right. And so as drastic as that shift was, it didn't heal everything, but it gave her something as a baseline that she can get back to, knowing that she can return to that state.
Right.
And, she's still doesn't need her medicine. She's still virtually pain-free most of the time. Her memory's coming back now, or her memory's back now, actually. So she doesn't have the memory problems anymore. And she is a pretty joyful person. You would never know that she was this completely suicidal person before looking at her now.
That's totally true. I met her long after, and I would never even imagine her that way. I
Right.
love her energy. It's beautiful.
I love my mom.
I know. I love your mom too. Can we
know.
go see your
I
mom?
know, we all love your mom. She's a really cool lady.
Brandon, can't you just share?
Her farm is really awesome too. Good energies there.
One of the most profound and visually impactful healings that I ever did. I had a friend who had, he'd been in a fight, and he'd had some ribs broken and right over his heart. And it was, you could see them you could see this like rippling in the skin and feel how the rib was incomplete. And he couldn't use that whole side. Like he couldn't lift his arm up to even slip it inside of a shirt. And he certainly wasn't holding or carrying anything. And so I started working on him, and in those days I was just kind of blowing open. So when I would access energy, I would like, how much can I pull in? I can do anything, very much like in this, I can do anything kind of like godlike consciousness.
You still can.
I know, it's pretty cool. But now I don't fry things out anymore. Well, we'll talk about that another time. Stupid computer. So I started working on him, and and from many different approaches, and he passed out while I was doing the work, and it actually upset him. He's like, I don't want to go to sleep. I'm like, well, just don't go to sleep, just relax. And boom, he was out. He was completely asleep. And I worked for about 45 minutes. And as soon as I was done, he woke up, and he like got up and he was like, okay, that freaked me out. That totally freaked me out. I can't believe I just fell asleep, and I was like, it's okay. And he like went to the kitchen, and he picked up about the gallon of milk and poured himself some milk and put his shirt through the sleeve on his way into the kitchen because he was annoyed because his arm was restricted in movement. And he hasn't even figured out yet that he's now moving that whole arm and using that side. And he comes back in and he's carrying this big heavy thing on that arm. And I'm like, I don't know that I'd push it that far. And he goes, what are you talking about? I think you still have broken ribs. I think they're just reset right now. And I wouldn't put too much stress on him. And then he remembered, and he was like, oh God, it hurts. Oh God. And he put it down, and it was like it brought that memory back. Oh no, remember, there was pain there. There should be pain there. So it was fascinating.
That reminds me of a story that I had with a friend of mine in Hawaii who's not familiar at all with even the concept of energy work. And, I think he heard about Hawaiian kahunas, but not beyond that, you know.
Right.
And he has gout pretty bad. And so sometimes he can't walk. Like he'll be bedridden, won't be able to get out of his
painful.
bed. Yeah,
It's swollen down there.
At this point, he was bedridden for a week.
Oh.
And so he's just laying on his couch.
Which just makes it that much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, because nothing can move. You get a buildup of uric crystals.
Right. And that really does clog all of the lymphatic system. It's no movement.
So I was on the phone with him, and I started working on him. And he passed out, and I hung up the phone. I'm like, I'm going to call you. If you pass out, I'm going to call you back, and right when I'm done. He's like, okay. And then, so I hung up the phone, and I started working on him. And the moment I was done, I called him back, and he freaked out. He freaked out because right when he opened his eyes and woke up, the phone rang.
Right. Mm-hmm. Get out of my head.
He's like, how did you do that? How did you do that? I don't understand how you knew to do that. I'm like, because I just knew. Calm down. And he's like, how did you do that? I'm like, calm down. You're pacing back and forth in your living room, are you not? He's like, yes. How did you know that? Because I know. Look, your feet are healed. He's like, oh my God.
That didn't
You're
hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But oftentimes that it was that being freaked out by falling asleep. That's what reminded me of it.
Well, I had another friend who I've known forever, and when I started to awaken and really let the information come in, before I would, get little, I call them pings, when that somebody I know or care about or feel connected to will pop up in my head more often than they really should, or for no good reason, really. I call that pinging. So, all through my life, I'd ping, and usually the person would call me that day, or sometimes they'd call me within a few minutes. And I just thought, well, whatever, we're all connected. But
what a coincidence.
What a coinkydink. But as I really started to awaken more information was coming through with the pings. Emotions were coming through. Sometimes visuals were coming through. Sometimes whole states of minds were coming through. Sometimes memories were coming through. So with this one particular friend, his external presentation is always to be very light and very happy and happy-go-lucky, and I can be free, and he's just very that way, almost cherubic in his disposition, very sweet guy. But what I was getting when he was pinging was just awful. illness and horrible visual images and just this level of despair. It was heartbreaking to even believe that it was coming from him. And so I contacted him and I was like, hey, how are you doing? And he was like, I'm good. It's a bright and sunny day. And I'm like, okay, so I'm like a psychic and all of this stuff, it's coming through. It's coming through and I can't get it out of my head. And, are you suicidal right now? I want you to be real with me, and we had this conversation and yeah, he was really suffering. And I kind of, connected in with his guides and his higher self, as you do when you're working with somebody, to understand, okay, what do they need? How can I help? What is it that's necessary here? And all I could see when I tuned into him was just all these connections of all these people pulling from him, just all this connections to him, tying and pulling him in all these directions. And all that was left was this tiny little bit of him that got to be by himself, and it was very damaged. And so I said, okay, well, how about, let's ground and get you connected. I'd already, he already kind of was a meditator and did yoga and all that kind of stuff. So he did that. And I pulled his energy out of his body and kind of out of all of that, just kind of gave it its own little separate space, this womb-like environment for him to exist within. And I said, how does that feel? Just how does that feel alone? And he was just like, oh my God, I feel like I can breathe. Okay, so this is part of this is how you allow people to connect to you and tie into you and do all of these things to pull on you. And so I was like, let's just leave you here and let's start looking at these different connections that are back in your body, that are connected to your energy field, that are connected to you physically, that all of these different connections. And let's decide which ones do you really want to keep. And he's like, I want them all to go. I was like, okay, all right, well, let's just think about that for a minute. And we were kind of talking about it. And anyway, we got cut off and the phone conversation got cut off. And I sat there and I was like, oh my gosh, he's out of his body. Do I leave him this way? Or do I put him back in that filthy pit? Like, what do I do? I was really concerned about that. And I kind of like tuned in and I'm like, no, he doesn't want to go back in. He doesn't want to go back in. And I was just about to do it. And he calls me up and he goes, I know you're about to put me back in. Don't do it. Don't put me back. I was like, okay. I'm glad. Now I see why I was really debating it.
I don't want to go.
Yeah. And he's like, can you just leave me out of here for a day? Just give me a day.
It's like the opposite of like how many people felt when they're being birthed. Put me back.
Definitely. Yeah. But it really shifted for him. And now he manages his connections. He's very aware of how he connects to people, and he understands what that is when he's feeling those pulls. And
Totally.
And so much of that suffering isn't his. Because as empaths, we take on so much that we feel from people.
That was me. Like you described my experience. That was me. As an empath, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't realize I was an empath until 2011, and I was well into my 30s by then. So I had an entire lifetime of experiences and connections to people. Yep. And yeah, talk about the laundry list of mental illnesses again. Right. There was a reason I never told doctors I could hear voices, because I didn't want to be labeled as schizophrenic. Right. There were already people in my family who are quite crazy because of schizophrenia, because of the combative, I'm not going to listen to these voices, I'm going to take pills to drown them out.
Oh my God, and those pills.
Yeah.
What they do to your psyche and your body.
Well, that was just it. I've only been on one antidepressant, and that was one too many for me. It was great to not feel depressed, but I didn't feel anything. I was this void of nothingness, because the antidepressants, they push your neurochemicals in ways that are not healthy to try to balance you out. But it doesn't ever get to the root cause of the problem, which for me was connections and all of the responsibility I took for all of the people in my life who were toxic, who said to me, all kinds of stuff. I need you to be responsible. Here, hold my secret. I don't want anyone else to know this except for you.
Right.
Oh, okay, sure, no problem. I can hold that. Yeah, no, I can't.
And I don't want to anymore.
I'll hear you. I'll listen to you, but I'm not going to hold that indefinitely. That's yours. That's your baggage.
My mom heard voices as well, and that was part of her initial condition and diagnosis was schizophrenia, and because she also she didn't quite hear it at night. It would get loud, and she didn't quite hear it so clearly where she could also hear the precise conversation, but she heard like conversations all the time, and she described it as like being in constant whispers, like, and then so it was very faint. But within that also, she also had a certain voice that would always tell her to do messed up things.
Right.
I do too.
And so I just wanted to bring that up because it's not always like our guides. It's
No.
not always
Very, very
like
much so.
something that we're supposed to have. Because when I looked into it at that point, I'd already started doing. I'd already been awakened and I already started doing my work. And I'm like, and she mentioned this. It was this voice. She's like, I have the whispers, but there's this voice. And I'm like, oh, well, you got a hitchhiker. So we need to get rid of this hitchhiker. And so like I did some work. It was a spirit named Tom. I don't but
Oh, that's so weird. I had a spirit named Tom.
it was Tom, so you gotta watch him.
I don't like Toms at all.
You know,
I had an ex named Tom too, and he was very lame. Toms are out.
I think that is a good point, though, because I definitely had that experience as well, where it was in, 2014, early 2014, when I finally, after weird incidences of literally hurting myself, like I stabbed myself in the hand. I was
By accident, right? Like
Right,
not
right.
with intention.
Right. I was,
Right.
well, I did something where I was trying to take a pit out of an avocado, which I've done like 100 million times, and stupidly had my hand underneath it and I'm stabbing it with a knife trying to get it out. Like, it really ridiculous. Like, why would I do that?
Right.
Why? And then, of course, when I stabbed my hand, I just looked at it and was like, oh no. But I did this after I was processing, trying to email a shaman to help me diagnose, did I have an ancestral curse? It's what I felt was true, but the voice in my head was like, that's just crazy. Why are you doing this? This is money. This is some guy you don't even know. This is just insane. Crazy. Because that was what always stopped me. You're being crazy.
Right.
Hannah Neal, you're crazy. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that.
Yeah.
And when I finally stabbed myself in the hand, I had this realization, I have to stop hurting myself. Like this unintentional hurting myself, like harming myself. Why am I unintentionally harming myself? I had this energy with me. I had a hitchhiker. I had ancestral issues in my lineage that went back really far on both sides of my family, on both my mother and my father's side. Once that was reversed, that voice was gone. Gone. And it felt like night and day difference for me.
Well, and what you bring up is a really good point. That's what a healer does. A healer knows how to handle curse energy, knows how to talk to guardians,
Right.
knows how to serve as that translator for you. So those are the things that you go to a healer for. Those are the things healers support you with. And other than that, they should be teaching you. You know, when you're choosing who your guardians and guides are going to be on this physical world, those people that want to teach you how to manage your energy, what to do with it, how to cleanse yourself, how to bring yourself back to that optimum expression again, how to harmonize with God consciousness. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
How to be the best you can possibly be without
Exactly.
needing to rely on the other person to do so.
Exactly.
Right? It's not a dependency issue.
Right.
I don't need you in my life because I'm dependent on you to find the answers.
Right.
I find the answers. All of my answers are inside of me.
Right.
Wow. So when I tune in and I look, if I can't see it, that's when I know I need a healer.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that the interesting part about having this experience was because afterwards I was like, I want to know how to do this work. I want to remember how to do this work because I know this is why I had to do this so that I could remember this part of what I already know. So that's work I do now, looking at ancestral lines and looking at the generations and bringing people their ancestors because so many of us are disconnected from that. I was certainly disconnected from that. That's something I've had to really work on the last 2 years is getting that connection. Oh, this is part of who I am. I carry this DNA with me. This is part of how I'm showing up in this physical incarnation. Great. So I took these burdens on so I would remember. So I'd remember my innate healing. I would remember all of these things that I
Right.
had, so that now I can do this work for other people and help them to remember. It's not
Exactly.
about, oh, hey, did you see what I can do? This is so cool. I'm the only person who can do this, and you have to come to me. No. No, I want to share this with everybody.
Right.
You know, and
I'm
it
gonna
was
wake that up in you.
right, and it wasn't like I took a class. Literally, I learned by this shaman doing the work on me. And then
Yeah.
and waiting the time to fully remember, fully accept that I could remember this, and then do it. It wasn't a matter of somebody saying, well, you have to sit down, and then you do this, and then you do... No. It was in memory. And that's something that's also happened since I've known both of you. There have been a lot of things, because both of you work with a lot of strands and seeds. Those were things I never really worked with, but literally over the weekend, I was having some of my own issues, and I went to Jessie, and she was like, why don't you do that thing that Brandon does with the seed? And I was like, my first thought was like, I don't know if I can do that. but that's what Brandon does. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to meditation and just, whatever happens, happens. Sure enough, here comes the seed. And I'm like, oh, see, this is why we love Brandon. Because now I can remember part of these things too. I'm going, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, this helped me. It expanded my heart. It did a lot of work inside. And I was like, oh, this feels so good. And then my body readjusted, my back cracked, my hips popped. I'm like, sweet. This is good.
I think part of this thing that goes right in line with the remembering is understanding the nature of consciousness and reality.
It's just where I
where
wanted
you're
to go.
When you understand the fundamental nature of how things really work, you understand that you don't really need to learn how to do a lot of these things, because you can just tap in. So when I'm getting work done, what I'll do is I'll tap in energetically to the person, and I'll feel what they're doing. And I'll get the understanding, like this full embodied understanding of how they're doing it. I'm like, oh, that's how they're doing it. And immediately I can kind of mirror what they're doing in order to do what they're doing. So a lot of the times, even if I don't think I've done that before, I don't think that I remember, it's just this tapping in that allows this experience to unfold naturally. So I'm right there with you. Like a lot of times I'll go to see a person who's done a certain thing that I'm not familiar with, and I'll just experience it. I'm like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing. Okay, yeah, okay, that's very similar. Okay, yeah, oh, I like that part.
Right.
So
Totally
I can
taking
do
that
this
piece.
a bit different.
yeah, or that too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to get into too, you touch upon the collective consciousness, the nature of conscious awareness. And Stephen Greer talked about this also, that how is it that, that these communications, these interdimensional beings can communicate across these things, or how can people communicate across vast distances, or how does remote healing work? How does all this stuff work? Well, because when you go up into that collective consciousness, you don't need to hold anything. It's all there.
Right.
You're just tapping in to what's there, this sea of knowledge and feelings and vibrations and emotions and understandings and experiences. And then it's like, if you start to think about what you want, you become a magnet for that.
Right.
And then you draw into you the knowledge, the information, the tools, the experience that you need. And then you further refine that. And okay, so first I want to figure out, how do I deal with when somebody is an alcoholic? That's one of my questions right now. How do I support an alcoholic? So I go up there and I just start thinking about an alcoholic, and then I start refining it. Oh, that's right, there's these aspects that are involved. Oh, yes, there's these aspects. And refining that search, it's just like refining a Google search when you're searching on the internet. It is the same thing. And we all can tap into that consciousness. It is not something that is reserved for an elite few. And if we've learned anything from the Abrahamic religions and the church, and the idea of having these people between us and God, between us and our knowledge, between us and our inherent abilities, it's that they shouldn't be there. They don't belong. You have a relationship with God.
Right.
Build that, whatever that God is. If it's the God consciousness, if it's the creator consciousness, if it's the dude in the white robe with the big white beard, if it's the lady, whatever that God is, because they're all just expressions of that creative consciousness. So we have to stop defining ourselves as, this is how I tap into God, this is who God is, and just start tapping in and working on, bringing that in. Sorry.
No, exactly.
My rant. But we are coming to the end of our hour. I hope that you guys all enjoyed our conversation about healing and Healing Talk. If you want to know more about it, send us questions and we can answer those and address them as we move forward. You can also visit us on, Facebook and Tumblr and Google Plus at The Crystal Cocoon. You can visit us on Twitter.
YouTube.
Oh, yes, YouTube. Excuse me, YouTube and iTunes, also at The Crystal Cocoon. And then on Twitter, we're Crystal_Cocoon_.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you want to catch up on a past show, they're also at those places on YouTube and
iTunes.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And I want to thank Eric again for being so amazing.
Yeah, so amazing.
You guys don't get to hear him, but he has the best voice.
He does indeed. He makes us all sound really awesome. So
Yes.
thank you again.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Aaron.
And thank you to all those listeners.
Yeah.
We will talk to you again soon.